Hey everybody, so I thought it might be cool today just to revisit a really old but still kind of great instructional video, one of the first bass instructional videos, which was recorded in the early 80s by the late and obviously very great Jaco Pastorius. That modern electric bass tuition video, you can find this on YouTube pretty easily if you put it in the search bar. And it also includes some bonus stuff at the end with Jaco playing with John Scofield and Ken Dinard too, which is pretty cool. Now, there's a bunch of really great points Jaco makes. It was near-ish to the end of his life, and he's clearly not in the best shape physically or mentally, but there's still a lot of flashes of brilliance in the playing he does, and also in what he says. It's very easy to miss some of the stuff that he says and just kind of gloss over it. But there's some real gold there in his advice for what a student player should be working on. So I wanted to just kind of touch on some of those, because even now these things are really still relevant. I remember as a kid when I bought the VHS video, I would note down all the little pointers, and it came with a book that didn't very accurately transcribe what was on the video, but it was still a help. But the stuff that Jaco said was as helpful as anything in terms of the actual playing on there, but his actual advice. So I want to kind of go through maybe 3 or 4 of the key points. One of the things he said was to learn melodies. All bass players could be more melodically aware, basically, right? And I think he plays a little bit of Alfie, the melody from the movie Alfie. And learning melodies is a great thing to do. So what's a good resource for learning melodies? Well, one of the things you could get is what's called the fake book or the real book, which is a book about this big, like a phone directory, full of jazz standards. Let me grab my copy, I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so this is a real book, the real book. Now I think this is a legal version, but they used to be sold under the counter, music stores all over the world. And this is a great thing to get hold of, because you've got a bunch of tunes in here that you could be playing and learn the melodies for, right? Whether it's Go from Ipanema, Stella by Starlight, Donna Lee, you know. But learn like some simple melodies. It's really good to start just learning by heart, you know, some classic jazz standards so you understand how melodies work over chord changes. Out of Nowhere is a really pretty melody. It goes like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, just playing a really simple melody like that in time, making it kind of swing nicely, getting used to playing longer notes too, because one of the things that I often find with students is if they're going to play a melody or a solo, which a solo should be melodic in content, often people choke the note lengths. They're not confident enough to play half notes and whole notes. If you play a melody like Out of Nowhere, get comfortable holding that F there, right? You notice what I do is a little vibrato on that, but none of that dragging the string up and down across the fingerboard, but just more of a classical style vibrato, which is also much the way if you watch Jaco play fretless, you would use vibrato, right? So this is a great book, and you know, there's so many cool standards, you know, stuff like Stella by Starlight, like I said, Solar, Miles Davis is brilliant, and there's hundreds of tunes in here. So this is something that instead of having just an app like iReal Pro, which doesn't contain melodies, it's just chord sequences for standards, right? You really need something like that app if you want to play along with standards, but you need to know the melodies, right? And often melodies, right, will contain gems of harmonic information that you can repurpose. I always talk about doing this. So you can make these part of your own vocabulary. You know, something like Tenor Madness, you know, which is a blues by Sonny Rollins, has a really good, the melody's very simple, but it's really still very clever. So if we were playing it, I'll play an F. I think it's normally in B flat originally, but I'll do an F here. So that is so cool because it starts on the third of the 1 chord of F, and then the melody changes one note to an A flat to become the flat 7 or minor 7 of the 4 chord, B flat. So So you hear the melody outlines the change in the harmony from the 1 to the 4 chord there in bars 1 and 2 of an F blues. Brilliant. Little things like that might then set you on a path to, well, why don't I take that little melodic phrase and use that as a springboard for a solo on an F blues. So I think, okay, a 1, 2, 3, 4. See what I mean? So I just use that as a really simple device to get into playing a solo. So these things can be used in many ways. You can slightly alter the melody to become something else, to become your own line, all right? Don't forget, please support the channel. You can do the Buy Me a Coffee link donations. It's in the information below. Stop by the website. I've got a bunch of stuff going on the website, and that'll be rufusphilpott.com. And you can pick up videos and downloads there. Now, another thing Jaco said was learn to read. And he said, you know, as far as books, and there's an interview, you know, Jerry Jamot is interviewing him. And he says, you know, just read it. He was like, I read anything I could get my hands on, like treble clef, tenor clef, bass clef, whatever. And that's good advice too. It's really not a bad idea to have some treble clef reading at your disposal. Sometimes you'll be called on to play a melody or a line, and it's been written by someone other than a bass player, and they've just got a treble clef version. So even just being able to read simple melodies, a tip for you, don't buy the bass clef version of this. Get the treble clef. I stupidly years ago got the bass clef version and instantly regretted it. It's much better learning to read melodies in treble clef. So that's one thing to do. On the subject of reading bass clef stuff, what I would say is, and I mentioned this in my best reading books that I recommended a few months ago. You can check that out on my channel. It's still up there. But learn to read different things. So, you know, Jaco was saying, like, you know, learn treble clef, bass clef. Also learn anything. Let me grab a couple of books and I'll show you what I mean. Look, so if I wanted to do some classical stuff, the cello suites, you know, the Bach cello suites are obviously like great. This is my very, very old and treasured version. And these are so beautiful, right? But then secondly, you guys, I always work through some of these with my students. Dotzau, there's some great cello studies, and these, you may not find this exact one because this copy is 30 years old, I think. But these are great because they go from fairly simple, so, you know, pretty easy, and then they go into sort of some pretty killer stuff. And the great thing about these is they're written in 6/8, 3/4, 4/4. A lot of them are arpeggio based, some are more scale sequence based, so they really cover like they'll really get your chops together too. Just playing some cello book etudes like that is really ass kicking, so that's great. Another thing is I always mention the Charlie Parker Omnibook is excellent. Yeah, any of these things will be really good, you know. So reading, that's another thing. He also mentions a little story about, I think, when his dad came home from a tour, or he was about to go away, I think. I'm just paraphrasing it. I think his dad said, when I come back, I want you to know all the notes on the E string or something. It was like, basically just, you know, like learn all the notes, right? And that is a great bit of advice. So we learn often just like scales over one octave, but there's something to be said for like as an objective, learning every note on each string, right? Sit there and go G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, and so on, right? When you notice there, for all the accidentals, the chromatic notes here, if I'm doing this, I'm going G, G sharp. But on the way down, I'll call any of the accidentals flats. That's just generally a way, if you're writing or saying stuff chromatically, then on the way up, use sharps, on the way down, use flats. But you're going to see that written sometimes differelly, but that's a general rule, okay? So learn the notes everywhere. I frequently go on about this stuff in videos about, you know, taking a triad, taking an arpeggio, learn it everywhere on the neck, you know, and it's so good to do that, you know. Recently with a few of my students, more like kind of beginner intermediate guys, I'm getting them just to be strong on inversions of triads, you know, that's starting on the third of the triad or the fifth, not always on the root, you know. So taking that advice that Jaco gave, it's like take a E flat major triad, start it on the third, which is a G on this bass, right, and go. So I go from third to third here, or here. Different fingerings, you see what I mean? I could use an open string. I don't know. Got a G up there. You see what I mean? So it's really great to do that, like learn stuff everywhere. Now, some basic technique stuff's also in this video. Jaco says, look, basic spacing of the fingers on the fretting hand, 1 finger per fret, you know? And Jaco had beautiful technique. I mean, if you look at him in his prime, even on the video, it's really good left-hand fretting technique. I mean, he's really strong, you know. And you notice he had incredible like double-jointed thumbs too, and it looked like large hands, so he could really get this nice span across the fingerboard if you're playing. Play with that 1 finger per fret. Don't, because we're not all gifted with that incredible double-jointed thumbs that Jaco had. I don't. I have no double joint going on in my thumbs. They're pretty rigid here. So it's very important, if you're doing this, is to get your thumb roughly opposite the second finger down here, right? Let it act as a pivot when you're playing. Don't let the thumb, this is, I always tell my students this, when you're moving up the neck, don't let the thumb get dragged back, so when you get up here, you end up playing like something horrible like this. Keep it supporting the fingers. You'll have far more dexterity like that, trust me, you really will. So 1 finger per fret, and you can do all sorts of simple exercises, whether you go I'm not a huge fan of those sort of digital pattern exercises, but you could do those for a couple of minutes a day or 5 minutes a day and just drill them. If you want to do those, here's just one suggestion. If you're going to do those digital patterns, incorporate string crossing too. So if you were to take 1, 2, 3, 4, jump a string to the A, then back up to the D, and then to the E, then move down a fret, so you're starting to stretch your fingers a little bit incrementally. Skip, back down, skip a string, see what I mean? You could do down, up. To me, it's a bit atonal. We're not really thinking of something harmonically here. It's just a pattern. But as a simple warm-up, I guess it has a little value. You know, you could do that. Alternatively, you could just practice a chromatic scale. See what I mean? Like that might be better. All right. So, 1 finger per fret. Now, there were exceptions when Jaco started showing these ways of playing arpeggios. And he was talking about like for working on technique and building stamina. And one of the things he said was arpeggios are the greatest. And I know what he means, because playing arpeggios fluently across the neck is challenging. And one of the things Jaco did, and this is where he started using some extended fingering, where he started going all the way up through the extensions of an arpeggio. And you can get all the way up, let's say you do a major, a major chord, major 7, we're going to add the 9, the 11, but it's going to be the sharp 11 up to the 13th, all right? So if I play C major 13, sharp 11, if you like. So I go C, E, G, B, D, F sharp, A, all right? It's that sound. And I think Jaco's finger, I didn't memorize it. I think he does this one at one point, which is very cool. He goes, I think he does that one, which is like this. You could also do 1, 4, 1, 4, 1, 4, 2, right? I don't like that one as much as this. C, E, G, B, D, F sharp, A. To me, that's good. I use extended, and then closed 1 finger per fret here. Like that. I think I like that more. Take the information from the video and then make it apply to your practice. You don't have to do it verbatim, you know, exactly what Jaco does, but I love that. If I play it this way, look, that's cool too. So I don't use the extended here, I just go, I'm doing this in triplets, 1 and a, 2 and a. But I use the extended on the way down, see? And I like that. Or extended on the way up and down. That's cool too. So again, we're adapting what Jaco said, okay? And he also plays some double stops as well, which are very pretty. Just a little, he does a little study with double stops too, and just very good foundation stuff. So go and check that video out and see what you think. There's some really cool stuff in there, and it's really worth revisiting. All right, and let me know in the comments what topics we can tackle on the next couple of videos. All right, I'll see you soon.